I discovered the terrifying revenge of Vlad the Impaler, cursed tortures beyond imagination. I never should have opened that door. The moment I turned the handle, a chill pierced through me like ice. I stepped into darkness. This wasn't just a room, it was a crypt of secrets. The air was thick, heavy with the whispers of the past. I felt the weight of eyes on me, unseen yet palpable. Each breath tasted stale, like decay. It's just an old house, I told myself. But something felt wrong. My routine involved exploring abandoned places, seeking thrill and stories lost in time. It was supposed to be just another day. The dusty walls creaked like bones, echoing every shift of my weight. Shadows flickered, playing tricks above me, stretching and bending in ways that made my heart race. Then I heard a low moan, a sound so chilling it sent shivers down my spine. I paused, straining to listen. Was it my imagination? Or something more? Cobwebs brushed against my skin like fingers, and I could smell the mustiness of forgotten memories. My hands trembled as I traced the outlines of ancient furniture, feeling the grooves and scratches that spoke of untold horror. Objects seemed to shift in the corner of my eye. A picture frame hung crooked, its glass reflecting an eerie glint. My heart thudded in my chest when I thought I saw movement within it, a flicker of a face, gone in a blink. I chuckled nervously. This wasn't the first time my mind played tricks. Yet dread weighed heavily in the pit of my stomach. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me. My breath hitched. I whipped around. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence that seemed to smother me. I took a step back, wanting to flee, but the door I came through was now locked tight. My pulse quickened as another noise pierced the stillness, a heavy scraping. Something was dragging itself across the floor, closer and closer. Panic clawed at my throat. I needed to get out. But my legs felt glued to the ground. My mind raced with thoughts of Vlad the Impaler, the tales of his gruesome legacy. The bloodshed, the punishments. What if his revenge had seeped into this place? A cursed remnant of his dark past? I couldn't shake the feeling. My skin crawled with anticipation, terror curling in the corners of my mind. What was happening? A figure loomed in the shadows, just a flicker, a dark silhouette against the dim light. Fear gripped me. I could barely breathe. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, and then silence fell. I was alone, until a raspy voice whispered my name from the corner of the room. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The voice was low and scratchy, resonating from the farthest corner of the shadowy room. Come closer. It slithered through the air like smoke, wrapping around my mind and tightening its grip. My heart hammered against my ribcage, each beat echoing the primal urge to flee, but I felt rooted in place as the command tugged at my limbs. I took a hesitant step forward, my breath hitching as the flickering light revealed more of the figure lurking in the darkness. It was emaciated, its skin stretched taut over its bones, glistening in the dimness like wax melted by an unseen flame. It had no discernible features, only an amorphous visage that shifted grotesquely, as if the very shadows around it were writhing in agony. Help me, it rasped. The voice was an empty chasm, echoing with the tormented souls that had been lost to this wretched place. The air grew colder, the breath from my mouth visible, swirling like fog before me. What lay before me could not be real. It defied logic, the imagination of a mind steeped in supernatural tales. Nevertheless, something inside me compelled me to take another step. Maybe it was pity, or the insatiable curiosity that had led me here in the first place. What do you want? I finally managed to stammer, my voice weak against the weight of this abyssal horror. "Free me," it begged, its amorphous form twitching violently. "The shackles are binding." I glanced down, my eyes tracing the threshold of the inky dark, where shadow met the floor. My heart sank as faint glimmers of chains appeared woven into the darkness, their links resembling the cruel steel of punishment. I couldn't fathom their origin, but a vivid image of Vlad's victims flashed in my mind, bound and broken, evoking a sickening nausea. "Release me from this place." It clamored, the shrillness of its demand vibrating through the very fabric of reality. The shadows around it stretched and contorted, seemingly pulsating in response to its agony. I felt a surge of dread, an overwhelming urge to turn and run, yet the figure's haunting plea held me captive. A force beyond comprehension seemed to hover in the air, our fates intertwined by something sinister. Suddenly, the silence severed itself, and the old wooden floor began to creak menacingly beneath my feet. I looked down, dread pooling in my stomach as I realized I was not alone. Shadows slithered along the ground, twisting like serpents as more figures began to materialize, emerging slowly from the recesses of the room. They were all gaunt and spectral, faces contorted in a silent scream, a swarm of the suffering, a collective wraith drawn by the lingering remnants of Vlad's malice. "Help him!" they chanted, their voices intertwining like a grotesque hymn. "Free us!" Their eyes glistened with an unearthly yearning, the longing for liberation echoing in their translucent forms. The weight of their despair crashed over me, mingling with my fear. I felt their presence creeping under my skin, a chilling embrace wrapping tighter and tighter around my throat. My instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this den of darkness, yet a brutal curiosity screamed louder. What do I have to do? I managed to croak, hoping against hope that the answer would lead me to safety, rather than deeper into the void that threatened to consume me. "Sacrifice," the amorphous figure hissed, a ghastly grin spreading across its formless features, revealing jagged teeth gleaming with malice. "You will know pain, like ours." The other souls surged towards me, their skeletal hands clawing at the air between us as a rush of colder air enveloped me. I stumbled back, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. The room darkened, the shadows thickening until all I could see was the glint of their eyes, malevolent and hungry. In that suffocating blackness, a realization hit me. Opening the door had been a terrible mistake, but closing it might not free me from this torment. My mind flashed back to the whispered legend of Vlad, that his reign did not end with his death. He clawed back to life through the anguish of his murderers. I was, perhaps, sharing my fate with those who had perished here. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the hall as the shadows coalesced, forming a swirling vortex around me. The room vibrated with an ancient power, a reckoning. I felt fragile, like a candle flickering against the storm, a pulse deep within me beckoning to be extinguished, and then the darkness surged, swallowing me whole. "Are you ready?" a voice boomed, rumbling like thunder, drowning out my screams. The last thing I saw before I was consumed was the deeply sad, yet horrifying face of Vlad the Impaler, his eyes gleaming with madness. And then, everything went black. Light seeped in slowly, waking me from an abyss of despair. I blinked, disoriented, as I found myself sprawled on the cold concrete floor of a narrow corridor. The walls loomed around me, sweat-soaked and peeling, every blemish whispering secrets of the past. I pushed myself up, muscles trembling, my heart racing as I took in my surroundings. The air felt different now, thick, suffocating, laced with something acidic and foul. I staggered to my feet, disoriented and desperate to escape that morbid place. But the weight of heavy shadows still clung to me, a reminder of the horrors that sought to drag me back into their grasp. Suddenly, I could hear its soft, anguished sounds. Whispers, mingled with the echo of chains clattering rhythmically, scraping against each other like rattling bones. My pulse quickened as I followed the sound down the corridor, my feet propelling me forward despite the looming terror. Each step brought forth tumultuous memories of the shadowy figures begging for release. As I moved deeper, a flickering light pierced the darkness. Curiosity wrestled with fear inside me, a gruesome battle raging as I drew closer, the whispers intensifying as if urging me on. The light pulsated, a mocking heartbeat distant yet familiar, and emanating from a doorway end with peculiar symbols inscribed around its frame, glinting under the flickering glow with an unnerving life of their own. Tentatively, I pushed the door open, the stale air rushing in like a breath of freedom. Inside, the room was vast, and every surface was littered with remnants of despair. Tattered tapestries, rusted equipment, and hollow cries echoed within. The flickering light revealed a grotesque altar at the center, coated in a substance that glimmered unearthly in the dimness, a thick crimson, as if hundreds of sacrifices lived within it, demanding attention. Upon recognizing the altar, memories surged back with brutal clarity, Vlad's dark rituals and the torn scraps of humanity piled in a grotesque homage to his insatiable hunger for control. I stumbled back, my stomach churning, when suddenly a hollow laugh surrounded me, an echo brightening the dark with cold bravado. Not so brave now, are we? The voice ricocheted off the walls, thrilling and taunting. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall and spectral, adorned in layers of rags that floated ethereally as though suspended by a sinister breeze. It was a wraith, enshrined with the lingering essence of agony, and it bore a face that held a sickening familiarity. "Do you like my handiwork?" it crooned, drawing closer, its eyes resembling deep, endless voids. "Each of them bound, shackled, just as you will be. You think bravery is all it takes to escape? You're wrong." I backed away slowly, heart pounding, but there was nowhere to hide. The walls constricted as it spoke, shadows coiling around my legs, tightening like a noose. "Your curiosity has brought you here, but curiosity comes with a price. Your suffering shall be more profound than theirs." I rasped, choking on my terror. "What do you mean by they?" It cackled with malicious glee, and the flickering light danced around it, casting distorted shadows that twisted and elongated, giving life to forms of the cursed, gnashing their teeth and screaming within the confines of the cold, unyielding darkness. I realized then that they weren't just echoes of the tortured, they were trapped in a limbo, pulsating with dread and hunger, desperate for release. Their eyes locked onto me. "You will join them," it howled, lunging toward me with unnatural speed. In a blind panic, I turned and sprinted back down the corridor, my breath tearing from my throat in a desperate bid for survival. The whispers crescendoed and melded into a frenzied chorus. Their chants clawed at my mind, pulling me back as I stumbled, as though the very shadows yearned to snatch me back into their eternal despair. But something in the air changed. A reverberation traveled through the floor, a whisper of raw power and vengeance coursing beneath me, hinting at a portal, a violent distortion between worlds. Hidden somewhere in this haunted place. The terror of their screams intertwined with the rage of the malevolent force awakening around me. With frantic determination, I lunged for the exit I hoped would lead to freedom, but the wraith's laughter chased me, echoing alongside the murmurs of the damned. At that moment, my foot slipped, and I was falling through a gaping void that opened beneath the threshold. The last remnants of light faded, swallowed by a darkness so profound, it clutched at my soul and pulled me into the abyss. I screamed, but the wails of the tormented rose to overpower my voice. I clawed desperately at the air, yet the whispers turned ominous, promising that there were no endings, only awful continuities, a cycle that demanded yet another life to fill the void. And as I plummeted into the depths of shadows, the cold grip of the figure grasped my shoulder, sealing my fate with a last chilling promise: "Welcome home." I landed hard, the impact jolting through my bones as I gasped for breath. Darkness surrounded me, an oppressive cloak of midnight that numbed my senses. It took moments for my eyes to adjust, and even then, all I could discern was a macabre landscape, twisting and writhing like the dreams of a troubled mind. That I was trapped in a cavernous space, the air thick with an acrid scent that felt alive, stinging my nostrils and curling around my throat. There were whispers still, echoing through the cavern like a taunt, and as they wrapped around me, I felt the weight of despair surge anew. It was a cacophony of suffering, begging for acknowledgement, and fighting to shatter the remnants of courage within me. I slowly pushed myself upright, my heart pounding like a war drum. A shimmering figure flickered in and out of existence against the far wall, an ethereal silhouette that moved with the grace of a wisp. Pale hands, elongated and fragile, beckoned me closer. Against my better judgment, curiosity groped at my consciousness, drawing me nearer. help us, save us," it whispered, its voice similar to that of an echoing bell, dulcet yet laced with agony. It was hauntingly beautiful, almost seductive in its allure, and I found myself stepping across the floor toward the figure. Shadows around it twisted like restless phantoms, yet the yearning in its eyes was unshakable. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, fear layering each syllable as if it were a shroud. The figure shifted, revealing a face that seemed woven from sorrow and nostalgia. "I was once like you," it whispered. "I came seeking answers and found only torment." The truth hung heavy in the air, weighty and dreadful. I could see now the outlines of figures behind this apparition, shifting, their forms ghastly and shrouded in rags. They murmured in a frantic symphony, a song woven from despair, each note a plea escaping from cracked lips. "They are bound by the threads of Vlad's curse," the figure continued, its voice drawing me in with a seductive clarity. "You, too, could join us. But only if you embrace the darkness. Only then can we escape this hell." Escape? How? My voice trembled, uncertainty clawing deep within me. I could feel the shadows gripping my feet like a lover's embrace, urging me to turn away, yet the lingering hope, however frail, kept my gaze locked on the figure. "Join us," it invited, extending a hand that shone with ethereal light. "With your will, we can break free," uproot Vlad's reign of terror. "But we need your sacrifice." Before I could respond, the whispers intensified, rising to a fever pitch, drowning out reason with a cacophony of despair. The walls began to ripple, warping like water disturbed by an unseen force. The figures behind the apparition surged forward, their movements erratic and frantic, clawing at the edges of reality, trying to pierce through the veil binding them. "Do it!" they screamed, their hollow voices echoing through the caverns. "Set us free! Feed the darkness." The figure before me shimmered, its features becoming clearer, revealing a haunting familiarity. It was a face I hadn't seen in years, a vibrant friend lost to the sands of time. "You must embrace what you fear most," it urged, despair weaving through hope. My heart sank as memories rushed back, our laughter, our dreams tangled together. But those dreams had twisted, turned rancid in the clutches of this wretched place. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head violently. "I will not give in to this." With that, I turned to run, panic igniting every ounce of energy in my muscles. The shadows shrieked, their mournful cries piercing through my resolve as I sprinted away, the whispers tearing at my sanity, but the darkness coalesced around me, forming tendrils that clawed at my skin, dragging me backward in a concerted effort to claim me. I pushed against the ethereal pull with every ounce of my existence, adrenaline surging as I glanced over my shoulder. The figure stood there now, its face splitting into a grotesque smile of betrayal. "You can't escape, for the darkness also knows you, little one. It craves your essence." It will not be denied that I charged forward, breaking out of the cavern into an expansive chasm, the echoes of countless souls rising into the air, mingling into a wicked choir. I could see a flicker of light shimmering at the far end, a promise of sanctuary. But just as hope surged, a hand reached out from the shadows, long, skeletal fingers catching my ankle, dragging me down into the depths once more. In that moment of despair, I felt the vanishing earth beneath me as the ground crumbled, plunging me into an even darker abyss where a familiar voice echoed, drawing closer as the laughter of wraiths filled my ears. "Welcome home," it whispered, the shadows around me pulsating with merciless hunger, ready to swallow me whole once again. The plummet felt endless, a terrifying descent into the unknown where time lost all meaning. Cold air rushed past my face, whipping my hair in chaotic tendrils. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that whatever awaited me at the bottom wouldn't be as cruel as the darkness I'd just escaped. But deep down, the dust of dread settled heavily in my gut, whispering promises of deeper horrors. With a final thud, I landed on an uneven surface, a wave of pain shooting through my limbs as I grappled with the remnants of my fall. I lay still for a moment, attempting to regain my bearings amid the disorienting shadows that danced around me. As I opened my eyes, I was greeted by a sickly yellow light that filled the space, framing the twisted terrain around me, a landscape starkly alive yet grotesquely distorted. It took a moment for my vision to recover, but when it did, what I saw sent chills racing down my spine. I was surrounded by walls lined with grotesque carvings, tales of torment engraved into stone, depicting men and women twisted in agony, their mouths gaping in perpetual screams. Their eyes, however, retained a glimmer of consciousness, as if they were trapped forever in their own anguished expression, forever condemned to witness their pain replicated in brutal detail. As I stood, rooted by the realization, a low murmur echoed, growing louder and more distinct. The voices of the damned began to coalesce into a chant, ancient and rhythmic, rising and falling like a tide of despair. It spoke not of peace but of vengeance, the relentless pursuit of retribution for ages past. Flecks of memory brushed against my mind, whispers of Vlad's terror, his thirst for blood that fed not just on physical life but on the very essence of hope. Defy him, the voices urged, their timbre shifting, intermingled with raw sorrow and fury. Defy Vlad, and reap the consequences of his wrath. My heart raced as I took a faltering step forward. I had to find a way out of this never-ending nightmare. Yet, each step echoed ominously against the cool surface beneath me, as if awakening the restless souls enshrined in their anguished memorial. Suddenly, a figure erupted from the shadows. Drenched in tatters of darkness, its face obscured, it lunged forward with alarming speed. I staggered backward, colliding with the wall of horror behind me, my breath catching violently in my throat. But it was not before I registered the flares of dark red glimmering in its eyes. Hungry, feral, flee while you can. It rasped, voice like iron scraping against stone. They have come for you. You share his blood. You bear his name. Who? I gasped, my heart pounding in confusion. What do you mean? The figure collapsed to its knees, its head hanging low as the shadows pressed in closer, enveloping it. Vlad hungers for vengeance, and you are tethered to him. You cannot run from your legacy. We are bound, we are legion, and he will come for you. Before I could process its words, an earth-shattering roar echoed through the cavern, vibrating against the stone walls. The air grew thick with the heaviness of dread, as an unearthly presence loomed. I felt it before seeing it, an aura of malevolence that sent icy shards coursing through my veins. A silhouette emerged over 6 feet tall, emanating darkness that distorted the light around it. It was Vladimir himself, or at least a form of him, his once magnificent stature twisted into a shadow of horror. His eyes burned not just with fury but with an appetite that eclipsed even the most primal violence. Descendant of my blood, his voice dripped with malice. You come to reclaim what you have forsaken? You will learn what it means to wield a name like mine. The ground beneath me trembled, and with each throbbing pulse, the walls shifted, the grotesque figures becoming animated within their bindings. They writhed and moaned, a cacophony of discordant cries pleading for salvation, yet their souls remained trapped, their fate intertwined with the curse of Vlad. Join me, or face the torment of your ancestors. He thundered, extending a hand that shimmered with dark power, promising horror and allure. The shadows surged around me, and in that terrifying moment, I felt the suffocating weight of countless souls demanding liberation, demanding revenge. My heart raced, caught between the remnants of defiance and the siren call of ancient darkness as Vlad's shadow loomed ever closer. And then, as I stood paralyzed between a legacy of despair and a fight for my life, I felt a rush of cold wind sweep through the cavern, a presence that pushed against me, urging me to choose. It was a final chance, the abyss pulling me ever deeper. Choose. The ethereal whisper demanded, drowning out the cacophony, the choices swirling chaotically, entwining with the dread that honed in on me like a blade. As the last of my resolve trembled, the ground split open beneath me, and I felt myself being drawn into a chasm of shadow-binding darkness where echoes of vengeance waited just out of reach. With one final gasp, I plummeted into the void, the anguished cries of the damned and the laughter of Vlad harmonizing in a chilling symphony. As the darkness enveloped me, I realized that in his quest for vengeance, Vlad had made it clear, I would become part of his legacy one way or another. The chasm swallowed me whole, tumbling me along a ferocious current. For an agonizing moment, I felt weightless, every fiber of my being suspended in an unfathomable blackness. But then, with a violent crash, I collided with something solid stone, slick and cold, the air knocked from my lungs. Gasping, I staggered to my feet, my body aching and trembling, but the chill that raced through me had nothing to do with the impact. Thick tendrils of fog curled and writhed in the space around me, whispering secrets in a language that felt ancient and bitter. The previous setting, with its tormented sculptures, was gone, replaced by a cavernous expanse reeking of decay and malice. As the mist slowly dissipated, I caught sight of forms materializing within specters adorned in ragged clothing, their faces twisted in terror. They flickered like candle flames, fleeting and unstable, yet I could see the pain etched into their features, their mouths forming soundless cries, "Help us!" A voice broke through, high-pitched and filled with despair. "He won't let us go." I turned, my heart racing, searching for the source. It was a girl, no older than 10, with hollow eyes that seemed to reflect a lifetime of suffering. "You have to do something," she pleaded, trembling as the shadows thickened around her. "You can't let him take you too, who?" I demanded, desperate for clarity, for anything that could tether me to reality. The girl merely pointed behind me, her small hand trembling. In an instant, panic surged through me, forcing my body to turn. There he stood, Vlad, or whatever grotesque imitation bore his shape, his tall figure casting an enormous shadow across the ground. His eyes blazed with cruel amusement, an insatiable hunger flickering behind them as he observed my fear. "Foolish child," he crooned, his voice a velvety darkness. "You think you have come to save these wretches? They are already mine, just as you will soon be. No. I screamed, but my voice felt small, lost in the echoes of the tormented. I looked back to the girl, but she had been swallowed by the mist, her figure replaced by writhing shadows. Chills crept up my spine. "Let them go. They don't belong to you." Vlad's laughter rippled through the air like cold water. "They have been gifted to me, nature's most exquisite punishment. Their suffering nourishes my power, and soon, you shall join them. After all, you are heir to a legacy steeped in blood and vengeance." I clenched my fists, desperation clawing at my insides. "I am not like you," I shouted. "I refuse to be part of your madness." In response, Vlad gestured with an elegant flick of his wrist, and the shadows darted towards me, scrambling to wrap around my legs like chains that sought to drag me into an abyss of eternal torment. My heart raced as I fought their grasp, terror seeping into my veins. The specters began to howl, their voices merging into a symphony of anguish as they clawed at the shadows, trying to wrench free from their ghastly master. "Fight, fight!" they cried. "Break the curse!" Suddenly, an image burst into my mind, vivid and striking, an ancient tome, dusty and bound in cracked leather, hidden within the depths of this dreadful labyrinth, a possible key to severing the ties that bound these souls and reclaiming my autonomy. "The book!" I whispered, half hopeful, half horrified, but Vlad seemed to sense my slipping will. He stepped forward, darkness swirling around him, his eyes glimmered with a rage that made the shadows writhe. "You cannot escape your bloodline's fate. They are bound to me as you are." With every ounce of courage I could muster, I broke free from the bindings of the shadows, sprinting past him into the mist, my breath ragged. I could still hear his laughter behind me, echoing in the caverns, filled with malice. "You think you can hide, little heir? I will always find you," the whispers of the specters urged me on. "Seek the book, it holds their freedom." I plunged deeper into the swirling fog, my surroundings warping with every frantic step, chasing the elusive memory of the tome. Yet the air grew thick, pressure closing in as if the very stone sought to reclaim me. The chants intensified, reverberating with an urgency that resonated in my chest. Countless pairs of eyes watched me from the shadows, sympathy mingled with despair, and then, as I rounded a corner, an apparition blocked my path, a towering figure with the faint glow of molten gold, a stark contrast to the shadows surrounding it. It turned, revealing a face marred by sorrow, darkness woven into its features. "You seek the book? But do you know the cost?" I froze, heart pounding as uncertainty flooded my mind. What cost? I stammered, curiosity becoming dread. What do you mean? The figure's voice was soft yet filled with ominous weight. To free them, you must embrace the darkness that lies within you. To defy Vlad is to become that which you fear. Before I could respond, the ground shook violently, echoing with Vlad's menacing presence. You cannot run forever. With a burst of determination, I dashed past the figure, plunging into the depths of shadows that beckoned me forward. Just as I felt the dark tendrils curling around my limbs again, a loud crack echoed, and a shadow consumed me, leaving only screams resonating in the darkness as I was plunged into a horror beyond imagination, and in that moment, the faint glimmer of hope flickered out. The shrieks of the unseen tortured souls echoed through the darkness, clawing at my sanity as I stumbled deeper into the murky abyss. Each echo enveloped me, amplifying my horror and fear. I felt as if the shadows themselves were alive, pulling at my memories, intertwining my very essence with their grim tale. My mind raced, and I gripped onto the last remaining thread of hope, the ancient tome. I could feel it, an insistent pulse calling to me from somewhere deeper within the shadows, a siren's song amidst the chaos. But was I strong enough to confront what waited in that yawning void? The thought of what Vlad would do to me if he caught me again sent a shiver down my spine. Suddenly, the air shifted, carrying the scent of earth and brine, sharp against the fader of decay surrounding me. Emerging from the thick mist, I came upon a cavern that opened up like the maw of a beast. Here, the whispers crescendoed into a haunting symphony, swirling around me as the specters beckoned, their once hopeful pleas now sounding like a funeral dirge. Do not lose your way. A voice, a familiar one, floated through the tumult. It was the little girl, her features translucent but her gaze steady. Find the book. But beware, beware the keeper of secrets. Who is the keeper? I rasped, hands trembling as I pressed forward. What must I do? The keeper protects the tome, but it is Vlad's servant. It will ensnare your soul if you are not vigilant. But it can be defeated, she urged, her voice fading as the shadows thickened. Remember, embrace your fear, claim your darkness. I choked down the ice forming in my gut, pushing past the girl's fading voice. Panic threatened to overtake me, but I steadied myself, drawing strength from the remnants of the lost souls nearby. I couldn't abandon them, I couldn't abandon myself. As I stepped closer to the cavern's heart, an unnatural chill swept over me. The whispers became cries, a convergence of sorrow that felt like a manifestation of suffering reaching out for respite. At the center of the cavern, a stone altar rose, ancient and cracked. On it lay the tome, exuding a faint glow that flickered like a dying star. I stepped forward, desire and fear warring within me. As I reached for the book, a sound interrupted my resolve, a wet slithering noise. My heart plummeted. The tone of the whispers changed, shifting from plea to malevolent glee, swirling like a storm around me. Before I could react, something surged from the shadows, an amorphous creature that coalesced into a grotesque form, half-formed faces howling in agony, each expression a reflection of anguish, fear, and darkness. A single golden eye pulsed at the center, fixated upon me, a depthless void filled with suffering and hostility. I am the keeper of secrets, it rasped, voices layering over one another, a cacophony of despair. You think you can wield the power of the tome? Even the whispers of tortured souls cannot protect you from the price of your desires. The creature lunged, its shadowy limbs twisting and reaching toward me. Instinct kicked in, and I stumbled back, narrowly avoiding its grasp. Stay away! I shouted, throwing my arms up in defense. My eyes darted around for a weapon, anything to fend off this monstrosity. Embrace what you fear. The little girl's words echoed in my subconscious, but I faltered. How could I possibly embrace that? The darkness that threatened to devour me felt insatiable, hungry. With a surge of reckless bravery, I met the creature's gaze. I will not be crushed by your darkness. I screamed, hurling myself forward, grasping the edges of the tome. Contact sent an electric shock throughout my body, blinding me momentarily. As the keeper screeched, a powerful surge of energy cascaded through me, merging with my essence. Images flashed before my eyes, haunting visions of Vlad, something unimaginable lurking behind him, and dark echoes of torment that seemed familiar yet ungraspable, but just as quickly, a darkness threatened to drown out this new light. A wave of malevolence swept over me, the tendrils of the keeper closing in, attempting to pull me back. To claim me as its prey. "You are mine," it growled, its voice combative, primal. That I held the tome tightly, the ancient text breathing warmth into my shivering hands, conflicting with the frigid despair of the cavern. Struggling against the impending gloom, I began to chant the words that emerged from my memory like a long-faded echo, powerful incantations that seemed to resonate with the book's ancient energy. But the keeper let out a piercing scream, and suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled violently. "Foolish child," it howled, "you will learn the price of defiance." Before I could react, the cavern walls split open, a yawning chasm appearing as slick darkness reached for me, pulling me inward. I stumbled back, clutching the tome, but its weight felt heavier, its power now siphoning into the core of my being. No! I shouted. My vision blurred as I felt myself plunge into the void, the keeper's visage a glimmer of terror fading into the darkness. The voices of the damned spiraled around me once again as I dropped, fighting against the pull of despair. With a final, shocking thud, I hit the ground harder than before. The world around me spun, and I gasped for breath, consciousness teetering at the edge of a chasm far deeper than the last. As I struggled to rise, I trembled not from fear, but an unexplainable sense of familiarity. The faces of the lost, the echoes of Vlad, they all seemed to coalesce into an unrecognizable amalgamation before me, and then I saw its keeper looming above, its golden eye locking onto mine, swirling with a predatory hunger. I understood then, deep in my marrow, that the true horror was no longer merely Vlad or the keeper, it was me. "Welcome to your fate," the creature whispered, its voice merging with all the voices around me as the ground began to crumble, wrenching away the very fabric of reality. And in that terrible moment, I was left to confront the truth of my bloodline. The final stitch in the tapestry of torment tightened around me, and all I could do was scream. The scream echoed through the chasm, mingling with the wails of the lost souls. The keeper loomed above me, its insidious form writhing like smoke brought to life. My mind raced, racing towards the horror encroaching in the corners of my memories, knotting tighter with every anguished cry. Why did it feel like I knew this darkness, this agony? As I blinked against the blinding light of the tome still clutched in my hands, threads of my past unraveling into grotesque shapes twisted around me. Images shimmered in the air, vibrant yet ghostly, faces of those I had lost, glancing back at me with accusing eyes. My father, his defiant spirit when the illness took him too soon. My mother, her shadowy silhouette retreating as sorrow gripped her heart. Each was bound to me by a thread of pain that seemed to connect back to this cursed place. "You are the legacy of Vlad," the keeper hissed, the weight of its tone pressing against my chest. "His blood courses through your veins. Would you sever it or embrace it?" "No," I shouted defiantly, though my resolve wavered under the weight of their stares. I thought I could fight this horror, but the reality began to seep into my bones. This wasn't just about confronting the keeper, or Vlad, this was about wrestling against the grotesque inheritance of my own existence. The tome pulsed in my hands, warmth contrasting with the icy dread clawing at my soul. An image flickered on its pages, illuminated by some unseen light, a ritual, a way to sever the link to my bloodline, to free myself from this lineage of torment. But the flicker of hope was overshadowed by the keeper's shrieks, which intertwined with the memories of pain that filled the cavern. Determined not to succumb, I felt a resolve harden within me. My lineage may bind me, but it would not define me. Suddenly, the ground beneath me released a low rumble, and without warning, jagged shards of rock pierced through the earth, each splintered fragment resembling a footfall waiting to trap me. I gasped, jumping back as they snapped and swirled around me in a chaotic ballet of stone and shadow. The keeper laughed, a sound that reverberated off the cavern walls like the cackling of some ancient demon. "Flee if you wish, but you cannot escape who you are," it taunted, its golden eye narrowing to slits. The cavern began to shift, mountains of earth collapsing. This prison was alive, every tremor a reminder of how my lineage had forged this twisted reality. I stumbled backward, words of the incantation bubbling to the surface. I took a deep breath, even as the air thickened with despair. I reject this fate. I yelled, the words echoing defiantly in the growing darkness. I will forge my own destiny. As I spoke, shadows flickered and twisted around the keeper, now writhing like a silhouette trying to escape the brunt of my declaration. The whispers strengthened, as if every soul trapped in this cycle of torment was urging me forward, lending their voices to many a terrible symphony of hope and anguish. The tome quivered with heat in my grasp, as if longing to be invoked, and with desperate hands, I opened it wide, allowing the incantations to spill forth, cascading around like fireflies illuminating the choking darkness. A radiant glow erupted from the pages, pushing back against the encroaching dread, illuminating the faces around me, distorted, pleading, yet filled with an ember of hope, but the keeper shrieked louder, lashing out with tendrils that raked the air. You cannot change your nature. You only prolong your suffering. It howled, and with a swift motion, lashed its shadows towards me. Just as I felt the cold grip wrapping around my throat, the pages of the tome burned bright, their words igniting with an intensity one had never witnessed. Release me! I shouted, channeling every ounce of my will as the light began to expand, enveloping the shadows threatening to suffocate me. The light pushed back, flinging the keeper's dark form across the gulf of the cavern, sending it crashing against the far wall. A roar of frustration echoed as the cavern itself trembled under the shockwave of our conflict. The shadows recoiled momentarily, revealing distorted images of countless souls, faces straining against the agony that kept them tethered to this hell. There was Vlad, his smiling visage twisted into an eerie grimace, drawing forth a memory of him gliding through the halls of his castle, powerful and merciless. The familiarity sent chills through me, and the dread that I carried swelled once again within the confines of my heart. Before I could gather my thoughts, the keeper surged forth once more, its massive presence looming larger than ever. You think you can defeat me? It bellowed, a cacophony of shrieks and taunts. You have only ignited your curse. I feed on your fear, and now your power will be mine. And then, the ground beneath me began to tremble violently. The walls of the cavern pulsed, releasing shards of stone like hissing serpents. Everything blurred, the only clarity found in the gaze of the golden eye fixated on me, now livid with rage. In that moment, a single truth pierced through the chaos: if I did not embrace my own darkness and harness this moment, I would fall victim not only to the keeper but to the legacy of Vlad himself. With a final breath, I prepared to leap, channeling every fear, every pain into that dark heart. But before I could leap or scream or do anything, the cavern itself groaned, the shadows swirled into a vortex, and with a thunderous crack, the entire ground beneath me ruptured in a fury of darkness. I was plummeting downwards, the keeper's cacophony resonating hauntingly against the dark, laughing at my impending doom. In the thrall of shadows and the ghostly chorus, a torturous realization burned through me: something worse than the keeper awaited below. A fate shackled to the heart of Vlad himself, where revenge hung like a noose, just waiting to reclaim me. Falling into a void of nothingness, I felt tendrils of darkness grasping at me, pulling me deeper into the chasm of despair. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of desperate voices surfacing from every shadow, each one racked with torment, sorrow mingled with insatiable rage. Terrified, I tried to scream, but the air was stolen from my lungs, evaporating into the suffocating blackness that surrounded me. As I descended, the images of my past flooded back, taking shape amidst the shadows. Flickering like candle flames, their presence illuminated the wailing faces of the damned. I recognized them, lost souls cradled in suffering, forever trapped in the realm of vengeance fueled by Vlad's insatiable thirst for retribution. The walls screamed for justice, or perhaps mercy, their cries rebounding mercilessly off the stone, echoing in my mind like haunting lullabies. Suddenly, my fall halted, the weightless sensation replaced by a bone-chilling cold. I landed hard, the ground beneath me as unyielding as bone. I took a moment to gather my bearings, squinting against the oppressive shadows that surrounded me like a heavy shroud. The cavern had transformed. I was no longer in the previous chamber, but in a space forbidding and timeless, walls garnished with ancient symbols that throbbed like a heartbeat. In the dim light, I spotted a figure crouched against one of the jagged walls, shivering, lineless skin stretched over brittle bones. It wasn't a lost soul, it was a human male. His eyes were wide and unblinking, terror etched across his gaunt features. When he finally caught sight of me, he stumbled to his feet with a rack of desperation, but failed to approach. "Stay back," he rasped, voice trembling. "You don't know what waits in this darkness. What are you doing here?" I demanded, feeling a flutter of hope break through my dread like a fragile thread. "We need to escape, escape." "There's no escaping Vlad's wrath." He flailed a gaunt arm toward the deeper shadows. "Listen. They'll come for you once they sense you're still tethered to him." Before I could reply, the air around us shifted, thickening like treacle. The shadows began to swirl violently, coalescing into shapes that writhed and slithered, eager to seize any lost spirit that wandered too close. The figure's expression twisted in horror. "The incarnates," he gasped. "What are they?" I stammered, eyes wide as the shapes grew more defined, unfurling into grotesque humanoid forms adorned with a patchwork of human skin. Their eyes shimmered like gold coins, reflecting a lifetime's worth of suffering and madness, glinting with anticipation as they slowly approached. "They are the echoes of Vlad's fury. They exist to torment those who bear his blood. You brought the Keeper's attention here, now they sense you." The man fell to his knees, clamoring for mercy that didn't exist. A surge of dread washed over me. Each incarnate wore the faces of individuals whose lives Vlad had stolen, memories of anger and anguish animated their ghastly forms. They reached out to me, panting as if their very essence hungered for recognition, for reprisal against the bloodline that anchored them to this torment. With a sudden shriek, the nearest one lunged, its elongated fingers stretching toward me, jagged edges glinting in the pale light. I stumbled back, adrenaline coursing through me, my instincts screaming to flee. Yet the shadowy figures advanced, their howls blaring, echoing with the anguish of lives unlived, each voice weaving into a chilling harmony that echoed my own fears. "Stand and fight," the man cried, a flicker of resolve crossing his wan features. "You're his legacy. You can push them away. You can reclaim your fate." He was right, this was my moment. I had overcome the Keeper, I could not let myself drown in this new wave of terror. Clenching the tome, I racked my mind for the incantation, for anything that might sever my link to this darkness. But my lips had barely begun to form those forbidden words when a sudden disturbance rattled the cavern, the stone walls quaking as if alive, reverberating with anger. The incarnates faltered, their grotesque forms momentarily stalled. Then, in unison, they turned their heads, their golden eyes locking on a point further down the cavern. "What are they?" I started to ask, but the man was already screaming, the horror dawning upon him. Their leader emerged from the depths, a figure ethereal and colossal, and shrouded in shadows carved from pure malice. The contours of its form were reminiscent of Vlad's. Dread filled me as I realized the creature wore his visage, twisted and alive with cruelty and bloodlust. I stood frozen, horror crystallizing in my veins, a realization crashing over me. The Keeper was but an echo of this nightmare. "Welcome, descendants of the cursed," the figure roared, voice slick with triumph. "You have come home to your punishment," and from the shadows, the incarnates charged with shrieks that clawed at the very fabric of existence. My heart raced, frantically beating against the claustrophobic fear settling over me. As the tides of nightmare closed in, I took a ragged breath and prepared to confront this impossible horror, knowing that my very fate danced on the edge of that looming darkness and whether I could claim my destiny or merely surrender to it. But in the final terrifying moment before the first hand reached me, it dawned upon me Vlad's intention was not to extinguish the last remnants of his bloodline, but to reclaim them, twisting the legacy into a weapon against all who dared defy him. And before I could react, I felt the sharp, cold grip of a hand forcing me to the ground as the shadows collapsed around, swallowing my screams and sealing my fate. I lost track of time in the darkness. It stretched endlessly around me like a vast void, holding me suspended between worlds. Even in this wretched depth, voices beckoned, a cacophony of desperation and familiarity pulled at my consciousness like a faded memory. The faces of loved ones emerged briefly through the thick veil, only to dissolve into haunting wails before I could grasp their connection. I clawed desperately at the weight of despair when suddenly, an intense surge of energy coursed through me, igniting forgotten memories deep within. I stumbled towards them, breath hitching painfully in my throat. Insistent whispers echoed through the shadows, urging me forward. Set us free. You are the legacy. You can end this. With newfound resolve, I surged forward through the fog, and before me loomed a chamber bathed in a ghostly light. At its center sat the altar. The tome lay there, but it no longer pulsed with anguish. It seemed serene, waiting for me, but just as I reached for it, a deep, torment-filled laughter erupted from the darkness. Vlad appeared, his visage darker but somehow more alluring than before, like an ancient king cloaked in shadows. Did you think you could convert this power to your own ends? He snarled, the weight of his charisma almost tangible. I see you finally returned. Let them go. I shouted, voice straining against the enveloping shadows. But Vlad merely tilted his head, his golden gaze piercing deep within my core. They are Mineus, you are. His eyes glinted with malice, and the shadows crept forward, twisted forms of the damned swirling around, eager and desperate. Embrace your heritage. Let the incarnates guide you. Desperation clawed at my mind. The stories, the horror of my bloodline, and all of Vlad's anguish surged around me like a storm. I recalled the rituals, the dark spells linked to my lineage, their very essence entwined with vengeance and rebirth. I had to find a way to break this cycle. Sacrifice has always been the key, the keeper whispered in my thoughts, resurfacing from the recesses of my memories, crystallizing the truth. This was not merely about releasing the lost, it was about choosing whether to lose myself to the same darkness that had bound them for centuries. Join me. Vlad continued, a luscious promise of power and vengeance wrapping around his every word. Together, we shall reclaim what has been taken. We will turn the tide. The shadows coiled around me, whispering promises of strength and freedom. I felt the warmth of the tome pressing against my skin, urging me toward the threshold of decision. But within the swirling mass of dark whispers, I sensed something else, a flicker of hope emanating from the lost souls around me, their yearning cries urging me to resist, fight against the darkness. Without thinking, I clasped the tome in both hands and shouted the incantation. The words tumbled forth, formed from the ashes of my past regrets and aspirations. As I spoke them, light erupted from the pages, engulfing the gloom and swirling with the strength of my resolve. Vlad shrieked, his visage contorting in fury. The illuminating energy surged around the crucible of shadows that had entrapped so many, creating a barrier that pushed back against the never-ending doom. In that moment, I saw it an opening, a way to sever the chains that bound the tortured souls, but it demanded more than strength. It required me to confront my ancestry, embrace what you fear most. The echoes shouted, intermixed with the cries of the damned, their pain coalescing into a furious tempest that complemented my desperation. With a heart-stopping determination, I surrendered to the truth coursing through my veins. I could feel the ancient curse of Vlad the Impaler. I was bound to him, his legacy intertwining with my very being. Like it or not, I had inherited that power alongside my fear. The moment I relented, the ground shook violently. Shadows twisted and surged like a living creature, merging in a fluid whirlwind of anguish, and Vlad's fury erupted alongside the swirling vortex. What have you done? He bellowed, the splendor of his figure morphing into a wretched cause of torment, as the tortured began breaking free from his clutches. Break free. The chorus of wails erupted, lifting me above the devastation. Their sorrow became my strength, fueling the very energies that hungered to bind Vlad's legacy. And as I unleashed the final incantation, light pulsed and flickered through the shadows. In a moment so surreal, I saw flashes of the past, faces I knew and cared for, voices echoing around me, family, my friends. They rose above the darkness, instilling courage within my heart. No more, I screamed against the pressure of shame and guilt. I reclaim my fate. As the remaining shadows collapsed under the brilliance of the radiant blaze, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, heard the chains of the cursed break apart, bursting into the empires of light and warmth. In that revelation came clarity. Vlad's torment would live on, seek to enter other vessels, but his influence over me had finally been severed. Yet in those glory moments of victory, I sensed a dread still lurking beneath. The flickering light swelled before me, revealing Vlad's raw visage for one last time, teeth bared in a predatory snarl of hatred. You may think you've won, but know this, darkness lives on within you. Its echoes shall always call to you, and I shall forever be at your heels. Horror streamed through me as the light began to contract, realizing that though I had escaped his immediate grasp, a lingering evil would always haunt my steps. With one last thrust of my will, I shot forth a wave of purification, driving back the last tendrils of shadow before me, and within that act, I felt a mixture of triumph and terror. The battle was won, but the war was never ending. Now, as I staggered back into the world above, breathing in the faint first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, I understood the haunting truth: evil never truly vanishes. It simply hides within, waiting for the call to answer. And the last thought that echoed in my mind? Vlad was not my curse, it was my choice, and now, it lingers in the shadows of my soul, waiting for the moment of awakening.